Hi, my name is Meredith Seeley, and I'm a PhD student and Freeman Family Fellow at VIMS.
Hi, I'm Ashley King. I'm a PhD student at VIMS, and we are students of Dr. Rob Hale studying plastic pollution.
Plastic pollution is something that you are probably familiar with from the news and the media. Oftentimes when we see images or we encounter stories about plastic pollution, this is what we hear about. You hear about a large net entangling a sea turtle or seabirds that have ingested too many pieces of plastic and ultimately died as a result. Plastic pollution, however, is not just big pieces of plastic like this that we can see with the naked eye. In fact, the majority of plastics in the environment are something called microplastics.
Now, microplastics are generally defined as plastic particles less than 5 millimeters in diameter. For reference, an old school pencil eraser is about 5 millimeters in diameter. Now, microplastics may be intentionally manufactured, for example, abrasives in personal care products called microbeads, or they may be derived from larger plastic products or debris formed through weathering or abrasion, for example, fibers derived from washing clothing. Now, as time goes on, plastic products break down into increasingly smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. Hence, macroplastics are young microplastics. Now, due to the extensive and increasing use of plastics, plastics are globally distributed, being found in remote deep oceanic trenches. The image at the top left is a plastic bag found in the Mariana Trench. But microplastics have also been found in mountaintops, polar regions, as well as in rain and snow. Microplastics have also been detected in the digestive tracts and respiratory organs of numerous organisms. In sediments, microplastics can alter soil physical characteristics, nutrient cycling, microbial processes, and can affect plant growth. One place that isn't mentioned much when it comes to microplastic exposure is indoors. Now, everything around us is made of plastic in our homes, right? Our clothes, furniture, our appliances. So it's an important pathway to keep in mind.
Now, since we encounter plastics in our day-to-day lives, they might trick you into thinking they're a simple pollutant to study, but that is not true. Microplastics are extremely complex. And to explain some of these complexities, I'll invite you to my imaginary ocean here that's been polluted with microplastics. Now, these microplastics are very simple in this image. They're all round bits of plastic, but as Ashley mentioned, they can be different shapes and sizes, which adds to their complexity. The different colors here illustrate the different polymers. Polymers build the backbone of plastic, and this is how we name them. So if you think of polyethylene or PVC, those are the polymers. Same with the recycling numbers on the bottom of the plastics. Those are for different types of polymers. But those are not the only chemicals inside of plastics. There are compounds called plastic additives, which help any plastic product serve its purpose, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of plastic additives in production. A really good example of additives being extremely powerful and important to the plastic chemistry is in PVC. On the left, you see a PVC pipe with a few concentrations of a plastic additive called phthalates, which are a plasticizer. And on the right, you see it with a higher concentration of those phthalates. So when you're looking at that one on the right, you may never guess that it's PVC because it has so many of those additives in it, creating it to be more flexible and able to serve its purpose. When we at VIMS are considering plastic pollution, one of the things we're of course thinking about are the marine organisms such as fish. One of our concerns about the complexities of plastic pollution is if additives such as those phthalates or the plasticizers leach into the water over time because the plastics reside in the water for so long. Once they do, are they ingested or integrated into the organisms that we care about? Another question with plastic pollution is if microplastics might be ingested by organisms, as Ashley mentioned. And after that ingestion, do those additives leach into those organisms and do the plastics stay there, or are they removed over time through their feces? Of course, a major question with both of these is this really even causing harm? Are the organisms dying or suffering as a result of the plastic and pollution and the additives within? And we'll dive into a little bit of our specific research on this, and I'll let Ashley talk about some of her research.
So my research is how microplastics interact in wastewater treatment plants. And so wastewater treatment plants receive all the things that go down the sink, down the toilet, discharges from industries and hospitals, and in some cases, stormwater runoff off the streets. Now, any microplastics inside the home environment, including fibers from clothes and carpets, floor dust, abrasives from personal care products, and tire dust and other particles from outside in the case of combined sewer operation, meaning that the plant receives both indoors and outdoors discharge, all that will end up in wastewater treatment plants. Now, because of this, wastewater treatment plants are a major collection point of microplastics, where upwards of 90% of those microplastics are removed from the effluent. This means that if, say, 20 microplastic particles enter a wastewater treatment plant, 10%, or 2 particles in this case, will then end up in the effluent, which is released into a nearby water body, and a lot of the rest, up to 18 particles in this case, will end up in the sludge. Now, in the United States, most of that sludge that is produced is land applied as soil conditioners or fertilizers for agriculture. Now, we are researching if the chemical additives are leaching out of the microplastics during the complex treatment processes or after treatment and once it has been put into the environment.
So we'll shift gears a little bit to talk about some of my research, which is really understanding if microplastics pose a threat to a variety of different marine organisms, or are microplastics toxic? One of the main areas that I study is how microplastics affect microbes, such as bacteria, in marine sediments. So in the benthos of the oceans and our coastal zones, there are a variety of bacteria that help digest organic matter that reaches the sediments. This can include plankton or feces, and now we know microplastics, which ultimately sink to the sediments over time. We've done some research and found that the presence of microplastics can alter the bacteria that are there, and thus the nutrients that they cycle. To illustrate just how important this is really similar to us ingesting food and the bacteria in our digestive tract. We know that bacteria are really important to healthy digestive systems. That's why we take things like probiotics or eat yogurt. When we ingest food, the bacteria in our stomach and gut and digestive system help process that organic matter or food and release nutrients that our body needs. This is the same way the sediments in the ocean work, recycling nutrients for the entire system or reducing nutrients that might be present in too high of concentrations, such as eutrophic systems. This is a really important thing that we're working on, but not the only thing that we're working on in terms of if microplastics might be toxic. We'll switch to a very much so bigger organism and all the way up to fish. So I study some species of a salmonid fish called rainbow trout. We're all familiar with trout. Maybe some of us are pescatarians and like to eat salmon and trout. But in the environment, both natural and in aquaculture environments, these organisms face many stressors. These can include things such as viruses or bacteria that can cause disease. One of the things that we're currently researching and trying to understand is if when fish encounter both disease and microplastics, does that cause more of the population to suffer as a result, or is there higher mortality as a result of that?
Now, everyone always asks us what we can do, right? And so companies bear responsibility in many ways, but we can always help at home, right? So clean up your local area. Remember, all roads lead to the ocean, as well as reducing your trash, particularly single-use plastics, which can accidentally make its way into the environment, are just a couple examples of things you can do at home.
Absolutely. One thing that we have to keep in mind, though, is that we shouldn't feel pressure to change our entire lives to help solve the problem. Plastics are not always fantastic, but they can be, and sometimes we need them to improve our day-to-day lives. It's okay to choose a couple things that you can do to help. And something that we like to remind everyone is that no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So pick a way that you can reduce the amount of plastic that you're throwing into the garbage, and thus the amount that might make its way into the environment by accident, and stick to that. And that's the best way that you can help. And with that, we'd both like to say thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be around to answer any questions that you might have. We have also included our contact information on the bottom left, so you can reach us by email or on Twitter. Thanks.